and be taken into account. This is the paradox between the personal, individual, and the public, group, social entities of a person. On one hand, a person is completely self-sufficient, and Robinson will survive on the island. On the other hand, if he is thrown onto this island as an infant, he will remain a humanoid animal. He will not have speech, certainly no writing, no crafts. At best, he will learn to gather slugs and eat roots. And that is in the best case. In fact, a person cannot adapt on their own. Unlike animals, they must be taught by their parents, at least by their mother during the initial period. This is to say that a person alone is not a human. A person is an individual who is burdened, loaded, enriched by all the experiences of humanity up to this moment. He is a bearer of culture. To some extent, a bearer of culture. The culture of the Stone Age or the culture of our time. But a person is a bearer of culture, and culture exists only on the basis of society, on the basis of groups. This is essential to understand and the social group. A social organism, society, people, tribe, is not some disjointed entity made up of people united by something conditional like words, signs, symbols. By no means. It is important to understand that this is a single system, unified. It is as unified as an anthill. It is as unified as a swarm of bees. Of course, it exists. According to incomparably more complex laws, the behavior of individuals that make up this group is incomparably more variable, and yet it is a unified system, and what affects one in one way or another affects anyone. The system has its own history, its own views on everything, its common future, and only as a whole can the system be understood, while not forgetting that each person is not just an individuality. What follows from this? That a people is not just a gathering of individuals. A people is a subject of history, a subject of politics, a subject of economics, a subject of culture, a subject that is a creator, originator, designer, producer, owner. Not at all. That is, it is indeed an extremely active unit, which is not in the passive voice, but in a very active one, if I may say so. So this human system naturally has an inherent and innate instinct for self-preservation. Here we come to the main point. It is precisely the instinct for self-preservation. Any system protects itself from destruction. This is natural. Destruction promises unknown. External particles, substances, objects that try to penetrate inside this system, which will disrupt its unity, which will disrupt its quality, and potentially, due to the unknown nature of all the possibilities of what has penetrated, it can be harmful or even deadly. Thus, any system, biological, strives to reject everything foreign, and the social system also strives to reject everything foreign. This is a fundamental law of nature. It is an instinct based on the laws of the universe. The system preserves itself, and the system wants to reject the foreign. This can be called social immunity, so to speak. When, in recent times, a few decades ago, the word xenophobia was put into circulation and given an ideological, political, and moral connotation, these are all tricks. Leftists and globalists, because in reality, distrust of outsiders, the checking of outsiders, the unwillingness to let outsiders in, is a natural social instinct, an aspect of the self-preservation instinct of the social system. In this case, the socio-ethnic system. This is normal. What they call xenophobia is a manifestation of social immunity, I repeat. This needs to be realized because a certain reevaluation of values occurs in the mind. Isn't that true? And then tolerance? Well, those interested, please look up the word tolerance on the internet. Tolerance is the suppression of immunity. It is tolerance towards foreign objects that penetrate inside you, into your system. A tolerant organism can die. The organism's immunity suppresses, well, when necessary, so that it does not reject implanted tissues and so on. But in principle, tolerance in a social system is its weakening. It becomes weaker, less capable of protecting itself. To some extent, tolerance is necessary because one must coexist with those around, undoubtedly. But the measure of tolerance should not be, under no circumstances should it be exceeded. Otherwise, any aggressive neighbor will push you down, and you will be so tolerant, you will endure and say, he has such a culture, and so on. Next to tolerance is this immunity. After all, indeed, immunity results from social rejection. The social system rejects foreign elements. Let's repeat this once more, and it is normal and natural. This is expressed in the simple old proverb, do not enter another monastery with your own rules. Because a social group, a people, in order to do something together, to coexist, to defend against common enemies, and so on, must be sufficiently united in their culture and mentality. There must be one ideology, one language, one religion, because otherwise it cannot be. There can be variations of this religion, but no more than variations, because a stifling sect will not coexist in a normal society. You understand? You understand? Here are the levels of unity of the system. The same these are the levels of existence of states and the levels of possibility of existence of the people. This is the unity of language, the unity of religion, the unity of territory, the unity of government, the unity of traditions, the unity of mentality. One could name several other aspects, but I think this is enough. In this state of layered unity, we congratulate each other on the same holidays. When someone sneezes, we say bless you, and we give up our seats to the elderly if someone hasn't become rude, although there are many such people and so on, because this is how it is customary for us. In another culture, if an unfamiliar man looks at a girl, it is an insult, and he can be severely punished. You are with the close men of that people among whom he found himself, and so on and so forth. Each people has its own peculiarities. So when there was a melting pot in America, it was about everyone who comes from different parts of the world merging into a single nation, united by common values. When all of this was decided to be replaced with a salad bowl, then this is all, forgive me generously, this is all fraud and charlatanism. Because multiculturalism as an idea is a destructive false idea. Multiculturalism, which is indeed being turned into actual reality, is in fact a destruction of the system. Because when we have different ways of life, different cultures, different traditions and beliefs, our people fall apart before our eyes. After all, Muslims have Friday as their day off, Jews have Saturday, and Christians have Sunday. But in civilized countries, they somehow coexist. In uncivilized ones, these jokes won't work. And so on and so forth. That is you can, I know, poke fun at the neighbor in the stairwell, but that's somehow in Christian culture. In Muslim culture, if you are not familiar, you can't poke fun at all because she is dressed in non-national women's clothing, so to speak. She will avert her gaze and won't respond to you. This is normal, but this normality affects both sides. Everything falls apart to hell. Because there are many differences in various aspects. People cannot live in the same communal apartment where one loves, heavy rock, and the other prefers silence. One wants to play the piano while the other wants to read poetry, and so on and so forth. It won't work. Give each person a separate apartment, but let them not interfere with each other's lives. To avoid interfering with each other's lives, they should have some things completely in one, generous template. They might say, how is this so? This is a deprivation of individuality. Deprivation. A person in society is free in the sector where they can choose, and he is not free in the sector where he cannot choose. He is indeed free to the extent that he can act at his discretion, without violating the existence and integrity of this society. If you put all the different ones in one basket, nothing will come of it and cannot come of it. There will be many cultural, civilizational, and religious structures in one territory. They will increasingly distance themselves from each other, until they completely fall apart. And it has indeed never been different anywhere in history. You see, that is the history. Here we have reached anti-Semitism. The reason is that Jews in any Christian society, we are not talking about Muslim ones, we are discussing Amsterdam, Europe, about Judeo-Christian culture, Judeo-Christian, because the roots of Christianity naturally go back to that sect that worshipped Yeshua. This is within this system. Jews have always been different because, firstly, Judaism prohibits any kind of missionary work, rather the opposite. For example, if Christianity is a very missionary religion, and Islam too, meaning to convert as many people as possible to Christianity or Islam, then Judaism, on the contrary, is closed off and tries not to. But it is precisely for this reason that it has been able to endure for so long, you see. Secondly, this separateness, its own religion, quickly began to provoke disapproving attitudes, because disapproving attitudes are always provoked by outsiders. On one hand, Jews have never posed a threat to any state in which they lived. We do not take ancient history, the Alexandrian massacre and so on. This is ancient history. We are already later. And on the other hand, in this separateness, closing in on the intellectual and spiritual side of life, that is, all men were universally literate, could read and write, diligently studied their history, and greeted each other with "next year in Jerusalem." For 2,000 years since the time of the dispersion, they indeed did not dissolve. But at the same time, listen, there are many other peoples among the great, powerful nations that are the titular nation of some state. And there are also various others. But the point is that in this separateness, unwilling to assimilate through mortal marriages, this was in the religious Jewish family, and great sorrow and so on, natural selection worked. And people, as the centuries passed, became increasingly skilled at inventing ways to survive, adapting, and quietly achieving their goals. Stubbornness developed, cunning developed, intelligence developed, and survivability developed. And when given the opportunity, people who for dozens of generations, 4 generations, 100 years, 1,000 years, that is 40 generations, somehow like that These people, who underwent a kind of natural selection for dozens of generations, lived under the pressure of the surrounding social environment, unwilling to dissolve in it. With these developed qualities, increased energy was needed to survive. They began to climb higher, occupy increasingly higher positions, achieve ever greater results, to do larger and higher amounts of money, can't say, otherwise, in short, to earn a lot. And this already caused natural discontent among the significantly large population in the society, because we allow another people to breathe and they still live better than us. He is not us, he does not live like us, yet he lives better than us. Well, not everyone, you see, they don't look at those who, feed on who knows what and shed tears in the ghetto. They look at those who have climbed to the top naturally. How can it be that we are dependent on them, on these moneylenders? We forbade them to plow the land, not only to own it, but also to rent it. We prohibited them from various crafts. We left them who knows what. The truth is, we couldn't forbid them to deal with money. People need to live somehow. So you will get your kindness that now there are Jewish moneylenders, and then Jewish scholars and musicians start to appear. Well, we will indeed live to see dentists and oligarchs. This leads to a completely natural exacerbation of the self-preservation instinct of the socio-ethnic system. One can say as much as they want that this is bad, that it is immoral, that it is harmful, that it is outdated, that it is unfair, and that it should not exist. I agree with all of this, just as I indeed agree that people should not die, that good should always triumph. We are not talking about what should be, but about what is. And there is a rejection of the system, of the foreign element, which begins to threaten the well-being of the native elements of this system, the mother system, so to speak. That is, it is a natural reaction. If you are different and live better, on average through someone, at least some of your representatives, those who live among the mother, so to speak, people, then they will not love you, because that is how the world is arranged. That is how humanity is arranged. That is how society is arranged. This is all sociology and social psychology. If this is not taken into account, then not only will it be impossible to understand something, but it will also be impossible to foresee something, as they could not foresee the anti-Semitism in the Third Reich, which ended. We know what concentration camps and so on, although this is a long story, because when the famous Vienna Conference gathered in 1938, no country would accept Jewish refugees from Germany. I no longer remember, but it seems that the small Dominican Republic was supposed to accept 100,000 people, but overall, no one accepted Jewish refugees from Germany. They could have accepted them. They could have allowed mass migration to Palestine. They could have done many things. No one showed any sympathy, and the Jews themselves did not show any foresight. Otherwise, they would have behaved somewhat differently. During the Weimar Republic in the 1920s and early 1930s in Germany, and then when the National Socialists came to power, they would have fled at once, taking with them everything that was possible, and what was not possible they would leave behind. But this did not happen because they did not want to see the truth, but wanted to see what they liked. Well, people tend to believe in what they like and what they want to believe. That's just how it is. As for, the Jews, if we take the selection that the people have gone through over 3,500 years, listen, the Egyptian